warn them about for a week. Women have been known to faint and men to puke. Shades drawn, all images are spat onto a pull-down screen. All the footage is taken at night under the harsh glare of a flood lamp. There's a pale teenage girl with glass shards stuck in her forehead. Her shadow, in sharp contrast behind her, wavers on the car seat upholstery. In the middle of one black man's face is a wet hole. Nose smashed and teeth knocked out. His head rests on the sidewalk curb, and he excretes a weak and gurgled bay. But the one image, reputed more than any other to induce queasiness, that's a dead man. He lies twisted in the road beside his car. His face and some of his scalp flap open, as if there were a rubber mask, failed by its stringy blood, its stringy glue of tissue and blood.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Jerome?
Jerome who?
Jerome is as good as your last picture.
After school, there isn't a lot to do. Drive around, masturbate, watch television until Mom or Dad get home. Some of the students have jobs working the counter at Burger King or cleaning halls in a residential hotel. A woman checks into room 43 at the Lido. Now there's a nice view.
It's a nice view. I can see past the fairgrounds as far as the Kmart.
And the Kmart must be a good 5 or 7 miles down from here.
Is it 5 or 7? Yeah, I can see beyond that as well.
You can watch the construction of the crosstown freeway, slow as it is.
Slow, but it finally got to my block. That's why I'm here.
Right. Your house is right there, isn't it? Well, that's a shame.
I can see the sign from the Denny's, the other side of I-5, from room 43 at night.
You can read that far.
No, I can't read it. I just know the shape, and the colors.
Yellow and red.
Right. Yellow and red.
Slow down and danger.
What?
Yellow, slow down.
Red, stop.
Stop. Danger. Nothing. Channel 20, 11 a.m. I love Lucy. Repeat.
Laughs begin as Lucy accidentally locks Desi and herself in the kitchen while guests arrive one by one. To add to the confusion and hilarity, the roast in the oven is forgotten until it sends out plumes of smoke, enveloping them like the black fog a squid emits under panic. Lucy and Desi are an inkblot folding out on the page of your screen, a black blossom, all memory sliding toward a congealed knot at its center. It's a comedic Rorschach resembling two faces, his and hers. One is yelling, the other, an open mouth, catches words.
My libido approaching 16 was, well, normal. Monstruoso, at least as large as myself, not bigger. It leaked into every crevice of my life. In the summer preceding my sophomore year, I discovered there was almost nothing that couldn't be sexualized by its proximity to sex, however convoluted. The most banal objects or structures, if associated with someone attractive, se me paraba al punto de dolerme. Y lo mismo, any shop which sold sexual paraphernalia, such as skin mags, massage oils, pharmacies with their racks of condoms and lubricants, any article of clothing which came in contact with el sexo de un hombre, Cristo, I was jerking off. De tanto masturbarme, el orgasmo era como una manera de exhalar. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Wadsworth.
Wadsworth who?
What's worse than having your father walk in on you while you're masturbating?
I don't know. What's worse than having your father walk in on you while you're masturbating?
Not stopping. We're just me on the bed en esa posición comprometida. But the photos I hunched over of naked men exposed mi deseo. Sí, pero también his fragileness. His dependency on the repetitions of history as he understands them. I spent the remains of that summer and the better part of the school year living with our neighbor, Laurie. It could have been a sort of holiday if not for the untimely interference of a production crew, come to town making movies for the politically nostalgic.
Something with Carol Burnett, but not a comedy. She plays a mother whose son is killed in Vietnam. Timothy Hutton is in it, and I got a part as an extra.
It happens often. Hollywood butts in, saying this is that. They like the layout because it's nothing. And nothing is a universal language. A number of films are made here, but on the screen, the here is always elsewhere. Because Stockton is flat and malleable, and closer to Los Angeles than Kansas, or the East Coast, or 1943, 54, 69, whatever. Nada se abre como se abre una flor al cobijo de la tibieza. Hollywood is a blanket pulled over this sleepy town.
Jessie, your mom just called. Your house is one of the locations they're going to film. Isn't that amazing? Maybe they'll use this place as a sort of rest area.
Los sueños se ponen allá donde no se recuerdan. Under the circumstances, I expected a reluctant reprieve, but that felt vindicated by the twist of events. Just as the film crew altered the facade of our craftsman home from dingy to charming, they turned his actions around into a true punishment. Carol Burnett stood on our front porch, sipping ice water through a straw, and I was forced to stay back the full distance of activity, of scaffolds and technicians running to and from trailers which lined the block. We all loved her comedy show and watched it every Saturday until it was no longer aired. When Tim Conway got Harvey Korman to break character, Dad laughed so hard his eyes teared. Mom said, Carol's portrayal of the discontent Basura Blanca wife, Eunice, was a credit to her acting abilities. These antics were a pace which once a week held our small family together. Dad stayed for the night, and Mom came out of her kitchen retreat to sit with us the full hour, minus occasional bathroom or snack runs during commercials. But of all of us, I was the most devoted. In part because of a union Carol brought into our home. Una unión mágica, magical if temporary. She represented to me an extreme, near mythical kindness, the sort of solace one finds in traveling a great physical distance from a troublesome situation. She embodied that. At night, a favorite game I played to lull myself to sleep was to imagine waking in the home of an actor or a singer I admired, like Lindsay Wagner or ese ridículo pero precioso Tony Orlando. I materialize on their sofa, blink my eyes, rubbing out the sleep, and absorb the new room. ¿Dónde estoy? Just like Dorothy, waking into Technicolor to find a land filled with celebrities who all want to help. Except I never said, nada como lugar, nada como lugar. The place I visited most often was Carol's. She seemed quick to accept my sudden presence as fate, and would invite me along with her daughter and her on a shopping spree. And somewhere in imagining the new wardrobe, I'd drift off. Then it happened that Carol came to my house, paced the living room carpet, chatted casually with my mom, sprinkled water from the kitchen sink onto her forehead and the back of her neck. All the time when I was banished from the premises. The closest I got was through Laurie's stories of her work as an extra in the film, and the occasional glimpse of Carol amongst the fake snow in the front yard. Laurie told me about the funeral scene in the country just east of town, about people fainting in the heat, which was magnified by huge lamps, used despite the bright sunlight.
Timothy Hutton plays the son who's not killed, so of course he's supposed to cry at his own brother's funeral, but you know, he couldn't do it. They had to spray something in his eyes to make them water.
And Carol?
No, Carol had real tears.
Cruise. Channel 10, 3 p.m. The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Only the low fart of upholstery enters an otherwise silent tension. It's Lou, leaning back in his office chair, resting against the cup of his own hands, fingers intertwined. Mary is opposite him, perched in a straight-back chair with feet crossed at the ankles, knees downstage. Her eyes stare at the point where Lou's desk presses into the short pile of an area rug. Lou opens his mouth to suck in air. The taste of her perfume mixes with coffee in the warm, moist cavity.
People, even strangers, remark on Dad's resemblance to Ed Asner, the man who played Lou Grant. Like the actor, Dad is bald on top, heavy set, has bushy eyebrows, and a prominent nose. It's a physical comparison. Nonetheless, he always responded by saying, "That's right, I'm the boss."
This was his favorite joke, and he'd tell it often. If no one provided the impetus, he'd do it himself.
People say I look like Lou Grant, and I tell them that's because I'm the boss. Channel 7, 6:30 p.m. Who's the boss?
Remember Tony Danza? You know, on that show, Taxi? Tony was cute, but later, while not much older, he was like a dumb, pushy uncle, trying to be fun and responsible at the same time. His face, which used to carry the wide, butch jeer of a hustler, lost its charm. It turned goofy, with eyes trying too hard to respond. And to what? I'm embarrassed to think I ever had a crush on this actor. I was susceptible to packaging. When Tony played the independent, streetwise stoner, I wanted him to pull over and fuck me in the back of a cab. Grunts and panting, Tony's bird stubble pressing hard to my neck. But when Tony graduated to professional babysitter, he talked too much and too politely. If I ran into him in a tea room now, I'd have to laugh. Okay, I'd still suck him off. But it'd be more like a joke. Like listening to an old Pablo Cruz album or toking a bong.
That's what Jesse did as a boy. Got stoned, listened to records.
Inside the sleeve of his Pablo Cruz album, the one where the band is posed naked on a beach, Jesse hid pages torn from an issue of Playgirl. The album cover showed 4 wet men, crouched and leaning forward. They had puka shells and fat, sexy lips, like Tony Danza's, but their genitals disappeared into a shade of pubic hair and thigh. In the shade of the album sleeve, Jesse ferreted a stock of genitals, ones he could draw into light when alone.
Yes, well, one day, Dad walked in on me when the pictures were laid out, like a fortune teller's cards, at the foot of my bed.
He makes me want to throw up.
Why?
He's dead, as far as I'm concerned, dead. It's your fault.
Can you believe it? He blamed me, but wouldn't say what it was I'd done.
Well, Jesse can stay here as long as necessary, but how are you? Jesse says Richard hit you.
He pushed me, the bastard.
Shot her so hard she fell over the coffee table.
Loopy!
Cutting her hand
My hand is fine.
on a shattered swan-shaped mint dish.
Oh, the white swan mint dish with the blue specks.
I bet she's
Sister Irene won that dish.
But how are you? Has a doctor looked at that cut?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay.
Channel 13, 8 p.m. Friendly Fire. Movie of the week.
A mother's fight to learn the truth about her son's death, starring Carol Burnett. Through much of the film, her mouth is a straight line, determined, and it is her eyes that must carry the brunt of the acting. Scanning a vast lawn patterned with headstones and tiny American flags, her eyes waver, the brows raise and scoot to the edge of her face. And those eyes, the brownish green of murky water, seem to say, "We are overwhelmed by the sheer, countless, terrible numbers."
One of the film sites used was my neighbor's house in East Stockton. Loopy and her husband Richard crowded in the back of the house while their son Jesse stayed with me. In the midst of a dry valley summer, their home was weighted with snow. After sunset, people drove over, stood around in t-shirts, drinking beer or Coke, just to see a house glowing under bright lights, a Christmas card.
In the yard, still Carol in a thick coat, talking to an actor in uniform.
Seeing this again on television, it seemed to the people less like actors in a film and more like an historical document. The one they witnessed, not the one it mimicked.
Dan,
¿Quién es?
un desconocido.
¿Qué desconocido?
Ay, no me haces caso. And it mixed with the stink of dead flowers and warm pavement stayed in town well after dark. Como si hasta el aire que lo lleva se sintiera muy cansado, como para levantarse e irse del valle. The film crew moved to a site near the university, cleaning the snow and lights, and the crowds that were drawn to them like moths. The house they left behind, my parents' home, looked smaller than before, drawn into itself, dark and roughed out by all the traffic. It recoiled from the glare of the street. Even my parents, though I couldn't see them, must have shrunk to fit inside this shabby dollhouse. Picturing my dad watching television alone, I felt the word nada. Nothing. Nothing was what I felt when I rode my bike north, snaking through dark blue streets. By the time I reached Harding Way, it seemed I was headed towards the Hilton. Lori told me Carl was staying there, pero ¿para qué? She'd be asleep now. Like Lori, she had an early morning ahead of her. Then I saw my actual destination. I knew this because I came to a stop before getting too close. It was a stucco box, pushed back from the street, and situated between the large spread of a bowling alley parking lot on one side and a dry riverbed on the other. A backlit signboard identified it as Paradise. Spelled out in impersonal plastic letters, slid into the grooves of the signboard, it seemed by its own lack of presentation to be a one-word oxymoron. This was the kind of lettering used to describe functional products such as blank tapes, used car parts, libros rebajados, or bait. It caused one to doubt its promise, and perhaps that was its purpose, to inspire doubt in the chance passerby, while speaking a certain and very encoded truth to the patrons it catered. My age, 15, kept me from attempting entrance, but it seemed safe enough to lock my bike to the fence, la cerca que divide la propiedad del bar de la del boliche. Here, the music leaked from Paradise made me feel implied, and in this sense included. Los maricones, the men in silk pastel polo shirts, combing their hair in car mirrors, nudging to their friends when they saw me, they did likewise.
Snow. Channel 4, cable, the home shopping network. An object rotates like a planet, stars of light flecking its polished edge. Thin fingers are pulled into the object's gravity, and red fingernails lick the air, a comet's fiery tail. They quiver and undulate over the object, a heavy brass buckle. An eagle in relief leans forward from the buckle and spreads its wings in a wide arch, embracing nothing. Riddling more spastic, the fingers grow thick, the nails crack, tips fall off, the polish fades, and wiry hairs, black and gray, sprout about the wrists. The hand balls into a fist, snaked with veins. It opens and grasps, barking at space.
When pissed off, Dad used to fall back on the threat to use the belt. It started by his fumbling with a large brass buckle. And the way it worked was, I had to do, or more often, stop doing whatever it was he was yelling about before the buckle was undone. After that, it took one simple jerk and the belt was free. Then it was a threat he felt compelled to make good on, and the number of straps was determined more by the degree of his rage than by my crime. After the incident with the Playgirl pages, however, and once I was allowed to return, the belt was neither used nor threatened. Most times, when I was younger, Dad simply tested the power of the belt. In those cases, his fingers were a bit more clumsy, as if the brass bird were flitting from his grasp to allow the extra seconds it sometimes took to seize the momentum of a wrongdoing. After I returned, and before I finally moved out for good, it seemed to be a long and comfortable period of fumbling.
Channel 10, 10:30 p.m. All in the family. Repeat.
In the house, Lupi was a servant. bringing Richard his beer, working out of sight lines, eating in the kitchen, and stealing liquor. Even in the company of her husband and child, her body seemed to hold itself away from them. I've seen family portraits and vacation photos where the three of them are posed, the two men clumped together and loopy off to the side, arms folded, or holding back so much that she's out of focus. In one picture of Jesse and her arm is outstretched, hand on his shoulder, seeming to push herself off of him and into the edge of the frame.
Yes, well, when the camera turns on her and Dad together, she's the one pushed. It's like looking at a car wreck. Mom's body crushed down, shell, with a wounded woman inside. Next to her, my father, the semi.
Channel 3, 11 p.m., Lou Grant.
The exact character he played in the Mary Tyler Moore show, the gruff head of a newsroom, a widower now married to his job, and this show isn't funny. The results are disconcerting. Ed Asner as Lou Grant, in the midst of comical situations, was funny. The same actor, playing the same role, surrounded by serious subject matter, is suddenly grave. As a result, the task of acting itself altered my perspective. Obviously, it's not a job of projecting a character, but of reflecting circumstance. In my daydreams, I relocated other members of the old Mary Tyler Moore show. Remember the happy homemaker, Sue Ineven? Can you see her cooking in a high school cafeteria, her witty sarcasm turning bitter, desperate? And the cute dingbat, Georgette, her I sent to France to become ignored and abused, her pathetic edge blossoming into its full tragic potential.
Channel 44, 2:30 a.m. The Honeymooners. Repeat. Ralph Cremden stands at the door, bag lunch in hand. He's come home, but something is amiss. The furniture is nicer. The kitchen is in a separate room closed off with wooden shutters.
Is this what they call French provincial?
Laughter.
A woman with red hair pulled into a knot at the top of her head comes in from stage left, the bedroom. It's Lucy.
Applause.
Hi, honey. Sorry I can't stay. I'm doing a commercial. Isn't that great? For vitamins.
She goes to kiss him on the cheek.
Hey, you're not Ricky.
And you're not Alice.
She looks towards the camera, her mouth dropping open wide enough to swallow the lens as it moves in for a close-up.
The game took me there, from throwing sitcom actors out into the world to talking my parents into television. I wanted to put them in some setting where their lives could seem light and amusing. First, there was Mom. She was easy. He was an awkward victim, detached from her family, yet somehow still totally domestic. So I turned her into Lucille Ball. When she held back, retreating to the kitchen or washroom, I imagined her plotting wacky schemes and rehearsing cha-cha numbers. For that, the Ed Asner look-alike, something was needed to deflate his banging fists and curses. He became Rolf of the Honeymooners. Still a fat and grumpy man, but as Rolf, tolerable. Bar, where's a bite? Rolf came across as ridiculous, bogus even.
One of these days, Alice.
He threatened.
Bam, to the moon.
But the moon wore a smile, and that day never came. It was cast every night into the hiss of snow that flurries at the station signing off.
Echo. Next door, you'll find Laurie's version, right now, asleep. A wanderlust never realized too late. It got lost in the folds of true crime and other tabloid literature. Laurie's an embryo, tossed upon the smoky ocean of other people's experiences. She reads about stars, fame, and astrology, and drives a Mazda, rarely leaving the city limits. Last night, she drove by the Del Monte canning factory, as she does every evening on her way home from work, the ember of her cigarette glowing like the little lights at the end of the smoke towers. She put her things into boxes, 1, 2, 3. This place had come furnished, which left only clothes, some kitchenware, toiletries, one large green ashtray, a quilt her aunt had given her, and radio.
What about the magazines?
Oh yeah, the magazines. Well, those she left stacked about the house, unable to throw them out before, regardless of how dated they'd become. She stared at those 3 boxes for longer than it took her to pack them, wallowing somewhere between pride and embarrassment at the portability of her lifestyle. And now she's sleeping. When I say the word which is the title of her story, it will be as if I'm leaning back into this cradle of time referred to as now, as in now she's sleeping, but which is actually located in the recent past. I will say this word and she'll wake up, or at least open her eyes, true wakefulness not being reached until the telephone rings.
Well?
Look at her, she's so peaceful. I hate to do it. She didn't get to sleep until about 3:30 this morning, the excitement and all. Oh well, the word is, the title of her story is Echo.
In seconds, the dream is only a dot on the horizon, slipping away like calendar pages in a black and white movie montage. All I remember is something about a lake, waist high in cool water, minnows nibbling at my ankles and calves. Stars of light bounced across the lake's surface, brighter than the sky they reflected. Stars of light, brighter than the sky they reflected. Half awake, the lake was projected onto my bedroom ceiling. Upon chipped paint, the light played out certain geometries. Shades of gray fit into neat triangles, polygons, trapezoids, moving slow and transparent across my field, like ectoplasm searching out the edge of the microscope's slide, like ectoplasm lazily searching where sides and corners crossed, new shapes were created. The grind of tractors shove about small mountains of dirt. Moving day. The house is empty. It isn't 8 o'clock and already heat pushes past the iron bars in bug screen. Moving. Oh, it so seldom rings. It's supposed to be turned off sometime today. When I answer, I'll hear Loopy, my old neighbor, speaking from a development with a name that evokes serene nature.
Ocean View,
Twin Oaks.
Fox Creek.
Gray Lakes.
I'll pick up the receiver and notice a man outside standing with his back to me, in the midst of the dirt field, hands on hips. When I first moved to Stockton, Loopy took me under her wing, a warm though uncomfortable place. But she moved 3 months ago. I'll use a tone of cheerful surprise, fitting for a long absent companion. I'll gaze towards where she was during all our past phone conversations, sitting at her kitchen window. In winter, when the cold made it too miserable to huddle at the fence, this is how we chatted. But now the window, the house, Loopy, her son and husband, they're not there. So it will be unnerving to hear her voice, disembodied, so to speak, like the trick of sawing a lady in half if one of the halves were to be lost. The man standing where her house once was will motion to a tractor, and she'll detail a history of the lawns in her vicinity in memory. This will remind me of a birthday party thrown for Jesse when he was 6 or 7. The smell of fresh-cut grass and lemon cake. Their backyard was decorated with a tent of colorful streamers, balloons, and a fat piñata shaped like a horse and rider. Bright and sheltering, it was a magical space kept from me by the guard of the picket fence and absence of verbal invitation. Being too polite to assume my welcome, I handed Jesse his present over the fence. It was small enough that I had to lean down through a slit in the streamers. The points of the fence pressed against my abdomen, and when Jesse took my wrists in his small, tight grasp, he tugged. He displayed a row of tiny white teeth. Come on. Being on tiptoe, I hadn't the leverage to offer resistance. As his tugging gained determination, the spiked ends of the fence pressed harder. It tore the fabric of my blouse and made it difficult to inhale. Hello?
1964, 2 feet, 1 inch.
1965, 2 feet, 4 inches.
Laurie? Laurie? You know, somewhere, not too deep, is a place where the weight of earth is a comfort. Somewhere a little ways down, the weight of earth is a comfort and not a pressure. You know, for things that live in the earth. Thick clouds fold in the sky, and I poke holes in dirt to let air seep in. Late in the afternoon, about 5:30, the shadow of my neighbor's garage stretches all the way across the front lawn. This brings out a hint of blue in the blades, like the blue of lips of someone who swam too long in a cold pool. A pattern of small sprinklers come on across the street, each making a perfect pillow sheet of water. I stand in the shade in slacks. With a rubber hose, I soak the earth. This brings out a hint of blue in the blades, like the blue of lips of someone who swam too long in a cool pool. A fly lights on my forehead.
1967, 2 feet, 10 inches.
Here people take their lawns seriously, not like Southside Laurie. Remember our little backyard pool, the one with the corrugated metal sides? We set it up every summer, and when it came down a few months later, there was a perfectly round spot of brown grass. They wouldn't go for something like that around here. In a letter from Jesse, he asked for a copy of an old family snapshot, one in which we're all standing in the pool. It was tacked up behind the kitchen door, near where we used to mark his height every year.
1968, 3 feet, 5 inches.
But, can you believe it? Because it was behind the door, I left it there. I know I did, Laurie. It's still in the house. Right behind the kitchen door. I'm sure no one would steal such a thing. Could you get it for me? We could get together later. I haven't seen you in so long. You should visit me here. See the new house, the new neighborhood.
1969, 3 feet, 7 inches.
The sun isn't even set before the street lamps come on. Next door, the middle boy and his sister are entangled in play. They wrestle. Cut blades stick to their arms and legs and his back. Their faces are lost in the nest of her hair. They are mean children. I've seen them being mean to smaller kids, mean to animals. In the tangle of limbs, his are slightly darker, and the lawn is a lush slope, a rich dark green with a hint of blue, like the blue of someone's lips who swam too long in a cool pool.
1971, 4 feet.
Things happen. A boy who ate too much watermelon threw up on the sidewalk, pink skirt splattering across the worn pavement. A woman in heels tried to walk across the lawn, but the earth was too soft. She removed her shoes and flicked off the bits of mud and grass.
1972, 4 feet, 6 inches.
1974, 5 feet, 1 inch.
1975, 5 feet, 3 inches.
And last week, a boy who was stabbed managed, somehow in his state, to crawl to our front porch. He kneeled at the first step. his left hand soaked red and pressed against his right shoulder. Jay Leno was on, and during a commercial I went to go get a pack of cigarettes from the glove compartment. There he was, bending forward. His back raised and fell with his breathing, and his free arm was extending out towards me. We were still, the two of us. My arms and my shoulders felt fuzzy, as if I were taken by the scruff of my neck and brought to some strange place. A strange place where young trees tried to hold the moonlight in their thin branches. A place where everything was foreign except this boy, for whom everything was foreign except me. So quiet. We never found out where he came from. It isn't like the old neighborhood where you hear gunshots every weekend. The only noise here comes from the nearby highway, which is far enough away to be like a river. So quiet. Well, Richard found me there about to touch the boy's hand. He pulled me in and slammed the door.
Oh no, we're calling the police and an ambulance.
By the time they arrived, there was a good deal of blood on the path. The walk is painted red, and at night the puddle looked like oil. Once everyone left, Richard hosed it off, telling me not to worry.
It's good for the plants.
In the morning, I went to watch the sunrise. There were dots of blood on the grass, which had dried the color of dirt. They wouldn't have been noticeable except for a sheen lifted in the light of dawn, revealing the trail of a boy's wavered steps towards our porch light.
1977, 5 feet, 9 inches.
1979, 5 feet, 11 inches.
Remember our little backyard pool with the corrugated metal siding? It always left a perfect dot of dead grass. Jessie sent a letter asking for the snapshot of which we're all standing in the pool. I think you took it. The water comes up halfway to my calves, but on little Jessie it's waist high. We tacked it up at the level of his height that year, there behind the kitchen door. But can you believe it? Because it was behind the door, I left it there, Lori. It's still in the house. Could you get it? You still have the key, don't you? We could get together later. I haven't seen you in so long.
Laurie says what people always say in movies and on television.
Don't worry, I'll take care of it.
Then leaves.
What made me feel all at once I had to get out of there? I looked towards Loopy's house where it wasn't, in search of the man standing in the field. But he too was gone, lost in a cloud of dust kicked up by a passing payloader. The smell of dust filled the house, smothering. I could feel the dust on my arms, legs, and face, and for the first time realized the urgency of my predicament. What I knew all along suddenly gained visceral impact. My house was in the midst of an 8-lane freeway, and I needed to escape from the path of oncoming vehicles. Soon, as were others, this place would be knocked down, splintered under the shove of a steel ball. The magazines, those stories of famous and murdered individuals, sad and restless, they'd endure yet another violent storm. In old horror films, ghosts wander the earth because they don't know they're dead. In the last 10 minutes of a movie, this bit of wisdom was used as a trump card, which worked best if revealed by a kid. Hey, terrible glowing specter, remember that plunge from the 3rd-story window? Well, your skull cracked open like an egg and your brain was a scrambled mush amongst the lilacs. You're somebody's dead uncle or great-grandmother, and isn't it about time you got a little rest? Then, poof, the specter suddenly just looked bent and weary, with tearful eyes inching towards an expression of what? Gratitude? Where once hovered a supernatural being wreaking havoc is now only a pathetic mist that never really meant to hurt anyone. It was just defending itself or something like that. Then, poof, again, it's gone, altogether save for a yellowed handkerchief or some such souvenir. What did Loopy's dead house leave behind? Not the photo, only dirt and her voice. Hearing her after so long, I was struck with a morbid thought that my house was demolished, with me in it. It was easy to imagine, looking at my thin, pale arms, yellowish with dust, that these limbs were the memory of a corpse. I imagined the freeway was built already, and every day and night thousands of cars, buses, and trucks drove through me. The people outside were lost souls, unfortunates who collided with drunk drivers, dense fogs, snipers, and roadside killers. I washed my face, put on shoes, and went to the car where the boxes filled the back seat. I didn't invest belief in my thought, but it made me anxious. Driving to the Hotel Lido, I reminded myself of the qualities of living most immediately evident.
There was a slit in the material of his car roof, and while he was paying for gas, I stuck my finger up through it. He was a stranger I wasn't supposed to get into a car with all those years. Though he didn't look the part, large, dome eyes and wet lips. His name was David, and he was at least 5 years older than I, but he had the face of a baby. The roof of his car was gritty, and when I pulled my finger back from but the tip was marked with orange dust. The thought of moisture collecting up there seemed improbable, but here was evidence staining my fingertip. I looked over my shoulder where David stuck the nozzle into the tank. In the flood of fluorescent light, his skin was vanilla, and the lips glistened under the coating. Did he lick them every time I wasn't looking? Or was it a sort of drooling problem?
Idle. Does anyone put weight to the accelerator?
He did eventually, though not much. We rode north as if coasting on a gradual descent, while he read billboards like they were punchlines. Got pest control, we killed Bug's dad. Sir Gawain, super hair.
Was there a destination?
It was a scenic route to inevitable sex. I thought accepting David's offer of a ride was enough of a gesture of consent, but then he insisted on ubiquitous small talk, making hints towards a sexuality I already assumed, which in turn made me reluctant to be too revealing.
Did he think you were straight?
No era muy listo que digamos, pero chula, acababa de salir de un bar gay. Me vio ligando en el estacionamiento y me ofreció un aventón. A mí, ¿te enteras? Jessie. Estábamos en 1978. Yo traía un arete, mi pelo largo, y no nomás corría como mujer, sino que me paraba como mujer. Y sigo así hasta ahorita, a mucha honra. No creo que me hubiera confundido con Booger. Hasta un niño de 5 años se hubiera dado cuenta. But there was some complex system in play I didn't want to dishonor. He asked about myself. Where was I from? Things like that. And within that frame, this artificially unconditioned conversation.
Bracketed by,
His large car.
bracketed by,
The smell of night.
bracketed by,
The recent occurrences. Being kicked out of a house. The proximity of Hollywood.
bracketed by,
My adolescence.
bracketed by,
Homosexuality.
bracketed by,
Maleness.
bracketed by,
The history of everything, including his large car, made me feel at liberty to disregard I told him I was up from Los Angeles, staying with my mother at the Hilton, where she did some work here in town. What kind of work does your mom do? She's in television. We parked at an outdoor mall across from the Hilton, and I pointed to a window way up on the 8th floor, where lights were on and the curtains drawn. She sat there. He looked and nodded, wiping a bit of spittle from his chin. Then led me through the pastel arch which stood at the entrance of the shopping area. The shops themselves, of course, were closed, but the way was marked by small mushroom-shaped lamps that sprouted every 9 feet or so amongst the ground, hugging foliage that lined the concrete path. This light became him, made his features seem less round, and his eyes, sheltered in shadow, gained something that could have been called thoughtful. A canal, no wider than David's car, ran through the center of the mall, populated with orange and black carp, which, due to their stillness, were hard to see in the dark. From one of the bridges that crossed over, we stared into the shallow water, looking for the gleam of scales. He talked a while about his son, who he lived with, and we stopped talking. There was only a low hum of what must have been a water filter. A noise which seemed to vibrate between us. We stood closer than we've ever been all evening, though neither of us had mentioned the motivation for being there. Neither of us even confessed yet to being gay. In fact, we alluded to the possibility that we were not gay by maintaining this prolonged omission. And in this tension, esta tensión fabulosa, I began to understand the advantages of suppressing the obvious. We move toward each other. There's the squeal of brakes. The entire body flinches and holds tense, anticipating the smash of metal and glass. The squeal continues. There is or there isn't a collision. Knock, knock.
The first thing David does is place his hand flush against Jesse's on the railing.
Jesse does not take his hand away.
This is how it started.
David moves his hand so that it is partially atop of Jesse's.
Jesse leans in slightly until not only are they touching hands, but the sleeve of his shirt at the forearm brushes the sleeve of David's shirt.
David leans in towards Jesse.
Jesse places his right hand over David's so that it is sandwiched between his two hands.
David sighs.
Jesse slides his hand partway up David's arm.
David turns slightly towards Jesse.
Jesse sighs.
David leans forward. This is somewhat awkward. He squeezes Jesse's hand, the one underneath his, and then slides it out from this deck of palms and resituates it so that his arm is behind Jesse with the hand cupping the nearest shoulder.
This is done quickly and Jesse, well...
Jesse doesn't resist.
David moves his face in towards Jesse's. They're incredibly close. David hesitates only a moment, then pushes his mouth upon Jesse's, parting Jesse's lips with a thick tongue.
This is done quickly and...
Jesse se atrapa. He's dumbfounded.
His arms waver in the air a while until they get a grip on David's back. He lets his jaw drop to accommodate the invading tongue, but it manages to fill even this wider gap.
Jesse takes air in through his nose.
He needs the skin at the back of David's neck.
As if looking for a handle.
Eventually, David moves out of Jesse's mouth. He slides across Jesse's cheek and down the throat, leaving a wet trail. When he finds the soft concave of skin stretched between the chin and the Adam's apple,
He sucks on it.
Jesse feels as if he were falling backwards again and again.
the scent of algae and spearmint cloud his thinking.
He had large hands.
He held my dick in his hand.
He held my dick in his
He spit in his
hands.
hand.
I ran my hands
He
through
had
his
nice
hair.
arms. He had stuff in his
He had
hair.
stuff in his hair.
He told me not to worry. He licked my hand.
He asked me to tell him
He seemed
when I was
nice.
close.
He put my hand on his
He
dick.
said he liked me.
We jerked each other off. He spit in his hand
He asked
again.
how old I was.
He put his nose in my ear.
He said that seemed nice.
He asked me to tell him when I was close.
He licked my hand and put it on his dick.
He tasted nice. He was nice.
He tasted nice.
He smiled.
We jerked each other
He
off.
asked if I liked it. He had large hands.
He made me dizzy.
He dropped to his knees.
He dropped to his
He
knees.
put his lips on my dick and
He
smiled.
was nice.
He made me dizzy.
He took my dick in his
He
mouth.
said my dick was
He
pretty.
said my dick was pretty.
He said I was hot.
He asked if I had ever done this before.
He held me.
He smiled.
He asked if I had ever
He
done
smiled
this
too
before.
much.
He smiled too much. He
He
took my cum in his mouth.
mouth.
He wiped his lips on
He
his
had
shirt
large
sleeve.
hands.
He
I
looked
felt
up at me and smiled.
Dizzy. He held me. Leaning over the railing, David spat out my cum, hitting the surface of the canal water with a plunk.
My dick glistened with his saliva.
My dick, erect in the night air, glistened with his saliva.
He spat my cum into the water. Slunk.
He squeezed a few more drops of cum from my
He pressed his dick against
from the
my
head of my
own.
dick, using this as a lubricant
He
on his
held
own.
me. He jerked.
He held me tight.
His eyes
He
flickered.
jerked himself quicker and quicker. His breathing gained thrust and surge.
He thrust. He whispered.
Los ruidos que hacía
He looked up.
sonaban a veces como palabras. His eyes rolled back into the cave of his skull. about those people fainting at a friendly fire funeral? Before the filming, I never heard the term. When Laurie went for auditions, I asked her what that meant, friendly fire.
My
She
uncle
said-
died of friendly fire. Friendly fire is a bullet from your own side, your own country. A bullet that wasn't meant to kill you, but it does. It's an accident.
Lori stands at the bottom of a stairwell. The Hotel Lido, her new home, temporarily. An older building with tall, ornate arches framing its facade, the Lido is one of the few structures in town over 2 stories high, conspicuous in its placement east of the main cluster of high-rises in the old downtown. Her room is situated on the top 4th floor, providing her with what would have been a vista of the house she'd just vacated, if not for the obstacle of the Pepsi-Cola bottling plant.
Across the hall from her room lives Cecilia Martinez.
A 21-year-old girl who, only 3 weeks after Laurie moves in,
3 weeks from now.
will be stabbed a la psycho in the 4th floor community shower. Detectives will wake Laurie at 6 a.m. to ask if she heard anything. While shaken, the full weight of what happened won't hit her until a day later, when the detectives leave and the bathroom on her floor is reopened. It is then, when going to take a shower herself, that she'll notice a white and clear striped plastic curtain separating the small changing booth from the shower stall was replaced by a pink, opaque curtain. She looked down at the mouth of a shower drain and pushed against the tiled wall to keep from falling forward towards the grated opening.
The photo of Cecilia in the paper, taken on her 20th birthday, will be the first real glimpse Lori will get of her neighbor. This seclusion annoyed Lori when she first moved into the building. She likes gossip and names to go with faces. But, unlike the neighborhood she was forced to leave, where summer heat pushed the center of activity from the shelter of living rooms into the public of lawns and front porches, the Lido residents remained anonymous behind locked doors. Her only solace is the thin walls, which make themselves known to her that first day as voices fall into the stairwell like so much light. Cecilia's being the clearest, drawing Lori towards its source, a Mexican love song. Carrying boxes, Lori picks out words she recognizes and feigns to join in. Look at the sky. It's bright and empty.
The sky is
Like the bottom of
empty,
the
folding unto itself,
And leaves sink towards a wet hole,
like calendar pages.
toothless and smashed,
The black and white
rested on the
movie
curb of
montage.
hysteria.
Wait, she's sleeping.
The proximity to sex, however
Transparent.
convoluted, political,
Lazy.
nostalgic, repetitious,
Serene.
historical,
Envelops like a black fog.
Summer pushes
Quiero
down
llevarte.
the lawn.
the remains of
Its
sex.
lushness, its inventive qualities, its ability to
Quiero tocarte la música de mi corazón.
Slack clumsily within the range
To
of his
stain.
range.
No digas nada.
Hold the weight of siblings.
Took to seize the momentum.
No me digas
What was the
nada.
joke? Something about leadership.
Walking into a technicolor dream with real
Nothing washes into
Por
nothing.
ser tu hombre.
After sunset, people drove over.
Porque tú
Stood
eres
around
el amor.
t-shirts,
We've all
stone.
turn on the
Tú eres
radio,
el mariposa.
suck, forget, rest, drive,
Si me dejaras,
watch objects
me
rotate
sentiría
around the
celosa.
planet. French provincial.
Where's the party?
Solo la muerte me detendría.
There's no
Solo la
pain.
muerte me
I'm okay,
salvaría.
really.
They like looking at car wrecks.
Tossed
tú te
upon the
fueras,
smoky ocean of other people's
La muerte
experiences.
sería mi último. Los ruidos que hacía sonaban a veces como palabras.
A comfort and not a pressure. Their faces are lost in the
Are you comfortable?
Red. Channel 20, 11 a.m. I Love Lucy. Repeat.
Medicine coats the inside of my mouth in a sweet and unctuous syrup. It eases down my throat, seeps into my blood and my spine. I feel sticky and heavy. Black blood clouds my brain, sloshes inside with the slow, tranquilizing sway of a wave machine. And it's so tasty, too. The words ease from my mouth, pulling my sleepy head towards some of their momentum. I say, vitamin to vitamin. And the words are out in the room, knocking the walls, sounding not like my own. These and others like them are smooth, stinky aliens slipping out of me like a bastard litter. They crowd the room and infect the air with their gummy trail. I wave at them. Scoot, scoot. Give the girl a little room. Another voice, a man, squirms about my skull, packed in the flood of alien blood.
Lucy, you've got some splaining to do.
It's a little thing inside of me, a pet. I'll hum to calm it. No explanations.
Lucy, I'm home.
No home.
Room 43 of the Lido looks east, towards Franklin High.
You can't see the school for the trees, but with field glasses you can see the flag when they raise it.
As the sun sets, the shadow of her building stretches before her.